Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. As you can see, we're in a different part of my game room today than usual. That's because it is loaded down all over the place with stacks of the NES Omnibus Volume 2. This book just came in. It's my newest book, and I'm in the process of autographing them and mailing them out to you guys. So if you pre-ordered the book or kickstarted it, it should reach your mailbox pretty soon. I'm a one-man operation, so I'm mailing out around 350 books or so. So it might take a week or so, but hang on tight and you will get your book. Today I want to talk about 7 Atari 2600 games that are actually worse than E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Now you guys have heard that E.T. is bad. Even if you've never played it, you know it's known as a bad game. Some people overestimate the impact that it had on the video game industry, that it caused the great video game crash of 1983, or at least that it was a significant aspect of that. Yes, it played a role, overproduced, etc., etc. Disappointing to a lot of fans that got it, to a lot of fans of the film. But it was an okay adventure game programmed by Howard Scott Warshaw in a very quick period of time. But for kids who got this for Christmas or whatever, and actually took the time to read the manual and learn what the game is about and how to play it, it was kind of okay. It wasn't too bad. So reports of E.T. being the worst game of all time, as a lot of you know, is greatly exaggerated. And I want to show you guys, talk a little bit about 7 games on the Atari 2600 that are much worse than E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Now these aren't the only games on the 2600 that are worse than E.T., but they are particularly egregious examples of being awful. So I will go through those for you right now. Now hang on till I get to the last one. I'm just going 7 in random order, but I did save one for the end because it's a ridiculous game with a ridiculous title, and the condition of the cartridge I have is just absurd. I've never seen a game in this bad of condition that still had the label completely intact. The label's not torn and it's not ripped off. It's fully intact, sort of, but you just got to see it to believe it. So hang on tight. It's ridiculous. So let's go with Snake by Data Age. I've talked about this game before. It's an abomination of a shooter. I do think if they spent another month or two on it, they could have tweaked the gameplay, the shooting action a little bit to make it a much better game. But as such, it's garbage. Now, Data Age, the company that produced this game, did put out a lot of crap like Airlock, like Bugs, but they also made some interesting games like Frankenstein's Monster and Journey Escape, which I both enjoy a lot on the 2600. So in a Snake, you shoot outward, maybe like an inverted Tempest or Gyrus, which kind of been cool if they would have worked on this game more, but it turns out that it sucks, so I'm getting rid of it. I'm gonna keep it in my collection, but anyway. It has poor controls, and sometimes, a lot of times your shots hit nothing. It's got sort of fast shooting action, and there seems to be a lot going on, but it's just not a great shooter. It needs more tweaking. It's a pretty bad game, and you see this on a lot of top 10 of the worst Atari 2600 games of all times lists. Snake, avoid. All right, so next up is a game. It's one of the more recent Atari 2600 acquisitions. I am still trying to put together a complete set of Atari 2600 games. I may never reach that goal, but yeah, I still collect physical media. Duh. Skeet Shoot. Holy cow, this game is crap. Now, I paid $5 for this, but still feel ripped off. It's a $15 game according to Video Game Price Charge, but not worth it. It's garbage. You aim in 5 directions at clay pigeons, because this is a skeet shooting game. It has horrible diagonal aiming because the controls are bad. It's got primitive graphics. It looks worse than a lot of Fairchild Channel F games. It even looks RCA Studio 2. Is it that bad? It's pretty darn bad. So Skeet Shoot not only has terrible gameplay, it looks like crap, even for an Atari 2600 game. Next up is Firefly. You move a stick figure around from screen to screen, firing missiles one at a time at blocky-looking, unrecognizable demons, bats, serpents, and pumpkins. It's kind of cool that you can gather treasure and rescue pixies, but you've got to turn down the sound while you play this game. It sounds horrible. It's got one of the worst constant sounds of any video game I've ever heard. got bad controls, terrible animation, and it gets old very quickly. That's a common theme with games on this list of 7. They're games that just get old fast. They're not fun to begin with, but even what mild enjoyment you might get out of them, they get old in a hurry. So that was Firefly. It's colorful, but it sucks and it sounds horrible. Next up is Starship. Kind of a cool name, interesting looking text label there. It's an early first-person shooter, and a second player can control the aliens. What's not to like? I'll tell you what's not to like. Bam! What's not to like is blocky graphics. Now that's common with Atari 2600, but these are particularly bad. Boring gameplay, it's so dull. Even just after a couple of minutes, you can play it, you can figure out what to do. If you might need to read the manual. That's another thing about these old Atari 2600 games. You always hear about pick up and play, but a lot of these titles you kind of have to, you do need to get online and read the manual. You can find HTML or PDFs of just about probably every Atari 2600 manual online. And you'll need to look at these manuals to figure out exactly what you're supposed to do in some of these games. Now, it's a first-person shooter, and it just gets boring really fast. There's an option on here called Lunar Lander, and trust me, it is not Lunar Lander from the arcade game. There's no gravity for starters. This is a launch title, Starship, for the 2600, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad game, being a launch title. I love several launch titles for the 2600. Video Olympics has some awesome Pong variations. Indy 500 is a solid racer with its own controller. Combat is an incredible 2-player game, as is Air-Sea Battle. But Starship is a lousy launch title for the 2600. Let's talk about, this is a real disappointment to me. This one hurts to say, but Miner 2049er absolutely sucks. Now that cartridge is in great condition. Maybe it's not anymore since I threw it over there, but the game is just painfully slow. Now it only has 3 screens. It's a climbing game. You know, you're climbing up ladders, you're filling in space by walking over the platforms, and it's got a lot of other, gameplay elements as well. I love Miner 2049er for the 5200, but the 2600 version Miner 2049er sucks. It has just 3 screens, which wouldn't automatically be a problem to me, but you just move so dang slow. And when you've filled out a lot of the level or completed a lot of the level, and you slide all the way to the bottom where you have to climb all the way back to the top, or you die and you have to start the level completely over, painful because you go so freaking slow. The graphics are solid, and like I said, it has 3 screens. It's got cannons, slides, and transporters. Cool, right? Not so cool. You just move too darn slow. Next up is Starfa.
Do a barrel roll.
No, not the Nintendo game, the Atari 2600 game. It's a fast shooting game. It looks like it might be cool because you shoot so fast, you ram into enemies or shoot them, and you can go down to grab crystals. Pretty cool, right? Not so much. It's garbage. The rapid fire gameplay, at first glance, you think, hey, I'm shooting fast. This is going to be awesome. Not so much. It's garbage. It's got a loud buzzing sound in the game that's just unbearable. You will, if you choose to play this game, and I beg you not to, turn it down and crank up some tunes. Now here's the game that's got one of the best titles for the 2600, best meaning bad. It's got colorful graphics. It kind of looks okay. It's a kid's game, recommended for kids 8 and under, but it's crap, and I'll tell you why. My cartridge is crap too, because check this out. Look at this label. Have you ever seen anything like this, that bad, but it's still intact, it's not torn? You know, it's not ripped from the cartridge, but what happened to this? And look, somebody tried to fill in with a pen the name of the game. It's called I Want My Mommy, but they didn't even put the N in there. It's I Want My Mommy. Anyway, on my list of games for my collection, I don't even check this one off because this is in such bad shape. I plan on replacing it. So this is a kid's game. It's colorful. You create ladders on each screen. There are 2 screens where you climb up the ladders. You have to create the ladders. You can see the little dots on the screen where you approach those, and you basically create these ladders. It's a simple process, but you don't necessarily know that right away unless you read the manual. It's kind of okay. It's kind of playable. You guys know I love climbing games, and I can play this game somewhat, but I have to knock it down to a D- or an F, in part because it ends after 2 screens. Like Airlock, also by data age, games last just 2 screens. Now, I don't mean it just has 2 screens and you keep playing and it gets harder. It ends after 2 screens. The game has an ending, a distinct ending. You climb up one screen, you climb up another screen, the game is over. Games often last less than 2 minutes. You can easily beat this game in less than 2 minutes once you figure out exactly what you're doing. The one bonus of this game is your mom in this title looks like Yoda. Hey, that's not a bad thing, right? It is a bad thing. This is a terrible game. I want my mommy. Let me know in the comments what games for the Atari 2600 are worse than E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, the much vilified game that should get a little more respect. E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, not terrible if you actually learn how to play it, especially considering it was just programmed in a few weeks. And that was a pretty elaborate adventure game for something like this. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. And again, my NES Omnibus Volume 2 is out. I've got stacks of them in my game room. I'm filling out, I'm signing Kickstarter orders, pre-orders just as fast as I can. And if you want to pre-order the book, or order the book actually, there's a link on the description of this video, or you can just go to brettweisswords.com. US residents can order signed copies direct from me. Foreign customers, I would recommend just getting on Amazon and buying a copy that way. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And maybe my next video will be from this vantage point as well because I am busy. My game room's a mess right now. Talk to you guys later. We'll see you in another video.